Welcome back to Fuel Up Classic. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome aboard. It's lovely to have people subscribing all the time. The channel's growing at a lovely rate, which is fantastic to see. And not only are there a vast array of classic car reviews on the channel, but I try and bring in some of my own projects as well, so you can kind of follow the journey of the highs and the lows of classic car ownership. Now, this is my 1966 MGB GT. I've done a couple of videos on this one before. It's very much a, how do I describe it nicely? It's not a pristine example by any means, but in the last video a few months ago, we managed to get the car running. And since then, on the occasional nice days that we have here in the UK over the winter, I have just been enjoying driving it. But with any old car, this is a 1966 car, this one, so quite an early BGT, there's always something to do. There's always something to tinker with, and there's always things that as you use it more, you find that you don't like or you want to change. That's the great thing about an MGB in itself. There's so much you can do to them. But there's one thing that I have just prioritised above all else. Forget the rust that's encroaching on quite a few panels. Forget the fact that it desperately needs a paint job as well, and there's some other things to mechanically recommission. I've blown the budget, basically, on one big part. But join me for a quick drive in this car, and I think all will become clear as to why, and I hope that there's some method in my madness as to why I've spent quite a lot of money, more than the car actually cost me in the first place, on upgrading one particular area of this car to make it more usable. All will become clear when we take it out for a drive, so let's do exactly that. So now we're out on a fairly fast open road here. It is a 60 mile an hour speed limit. I hope all will become clear, because what I've gone and purchased is a 3 synchro overdrive gearbox for this car. Now, if you know your MGs, you'll know that that's actually quite a rare find these days. Most of these cars that had factory fitted overdrive will still have it fitted. There's no reason, unless perhaps you're going racing with an MGB, to remove it. And I had really underestimated how much I would miss overdrive on a car like this. And for those not familiar, and you'll be more than forgiven for it because it is a very old-fashioned way of doing things, but overdrive essentially in its basic form acts like an extra half gear on third and fourth with an MGB. And what it does is just makes things a lot less busy at the higher speeds and really at motorway cruising speeds. This particular car is quite uncomfortable, and I'm going to show you that now. Let's just build things up to 55 miles an hour, and I hope you can pick this up at home. It gets quite noisy, and that is because, we'll slow things down again, that is because the engine is working pretty hard. It's run out of gears, and about 4,000 RPM is where it sits at about 60-65 miles an hour, and it's just that little bit too uncomfortable for me. It's noisy and it just feels like it's really overworking things. So for those longer journeys, I'm really hoping that this overdrive gearbox will just calm things down a little bit. Now, it remains to be seen whether it's worth it, but I expect at about 60-65 miles an hour, which, let's be honest, is the kind of speed that you need to cruise at in modern day traffic. You don't want to be in with the trucks doing 50-55. It's not a pleasant experience. You want to be ahead of those and just cruising along at a nice comfortable speed. And I hope that that will bring the revs down by about 500 RPM, and that makes a big difference. Just feels a little more calmer, a little bit more sedate. So that's the reason I've done it. It has been a big purchase, and say if you are from the MG community, you'll understand how rare a 3 synchro overdrive gearbox is these days. You can't buy them outright. You have to find an old part that's been reconditioned, and they're few and far between. Most people keep hold of them. So that's why I've done it. There's many other things to do on this car, but for me, getting it driving right and how I want it is the most important thing, because what's the point in having a classic car if you're not going to get out and enjoy it and take it places? So that's where we leave things at the moment. in terms of how this car is currently performing. Just a little bit too busy for me at the motorway cruising speed. I think it's going to make a huge difference to how I can use this MGB, because I'm going to remind you one more time, let's just bring this up to 50 miles an hour. It's a lovely noise the little B series makes. It's such a plucky little engine, but this is too loud. It's too loud for me for bringing things down again so you can hear me. Imagine that for 2 or 3 hours at a time, you'd have a headache, I think. So there you go. Little things that you improve and you find along the way as you own a classic car. So there we have it. I think, or I certainly hope, that it's going to make a substantial difference to how I can use this car, how comfortable I find driving this car longer distances. And I do want to drive it longer distances. We've got to take it on a trip somewhere. We've got to do something with this car when it's all sort of been mechanically recommissioned. The additional overdrive gearbox, well, I'd never budgeted for it and I'd never planned for it. It does mean the engine's got to come out. And no doubt when I'm doing that, we'll find other jobs that need doing. It would be foolish not to take advantage of that engine and gearbox coming out and refreshing a few things whilst it's off and on the bench. And that really brings me swiftly on to, I need to get on with this car now. I've got a couple of other projects that I'm juggling at the same time, and I will film some updates on the £500 Jaguar XJ. There's also my XJ6 Series 3, which doesn't need a lot, but I do plan on doing some little things to it to make sure that it's in tip-top condition. But this car now takes priority. Got to get that box in. Hopefully all is well. It is an untested gearbox, so we'll see how things go when we drive it for the first time. And I will keep you guys updated along the way. There'll be much more videos on this car. It is a bit of a keeper, I think. I really enjoy them. Honestly, if you've never driven an MGB and you want to take your first step into classic car ownership, an MG of this era, whether it be a midget, whether it be an MGB Roadster, a GT, fantastic entry-level classic car, so well supported, still reasonably cheap. Although that seems to be changing. There's a lot of them out there, but they are creeping up in price. But go and have a go. Don't dismiss one until you've driven one. I think they're fantastic and they're just great fun. So there we have it. Join me for the next video on this car, where I hope that we have made some significant upgrades on the car, and we'll see whether it was all worth it or whether I've just wasted a load of money for nothing.